Welcome everyone to another episode of Tips from My Garage. My name is Licia Titonga. I'm a recovering addict. I'm the father of two boys, husband to a beautiful wife, owner of online consulting business Upgrade Version U.0, and author of ebook Q&A Between Two Addicts. And today I want to talk to you about letting it burn. And the concept of letting it burn is just my take on the concept of white knuckling. And if you know anything about that concept of white knuckling or where it came from, I'll just give a little description. It comes from when you make a fist or when you're holding on to something hard enough that your knuckles start to turn white, as in if you were on an airplane flight and you'd never been anywhere before and you were so nervous, or even on a roller coaster or something like that, you kind of hold on to the uh, to the to the arms of the chair that you're on, and you hold it on. You're holding on for dear life, and it's like the color that your knuckles go because you're holding on so tight. And so that's where the concept of white knuckling comes from. Well, my take on white knuckling, as in how it refers to addiction and recovery, is letting it burn. And I call it letting it burn because in my head, or the way I conceptualize it, is that it's something that is purifying you, like gold when you put it into a burning hot fire, and then all of the dross melts off of it, and then you're left with a pure a pure substance, which would be the gold. Is much cleaner, it's much brighter, and so it has gone through a purification process. And so I that's where I came up with the concept letting it burn, because I used to believe that it's important for you to go through that refiner's fire where you have to white knuckle your way through situation to you make it all the way through. And as a result of doing that, you've gone through an experience that has purified you, that has tested you, that has strained you, that has zapped your energy, that has taken a lot of willpower from you. And as a result, even though you are drained of energy and willpower, you still went through the experience and made it through it. And that confidence that comes from making it through that experience will again be able to help you and give you the confidence and motivation you need for the next time you go through it, that you will be able to endure until the end, or endure the test or that circumstance you're in, and then hopefully be able to come out on the other end unscathed. But for me, I believe that that gave you strength, that you got stronger, that you gained confidence, you got stronger, you got a thicker skin, you have a positive experience. And when you build up more and more positive experiences, then that builds up more and more confidence for you to be able to continue to do that thing. And when I was going through my recovery, I did a lot of white knuckling. I had a lot of moments where I balled up in a corner and kind of just allowed it to burn, and for it to kind of run its course. I did also put myself into situations where I invited those pangs and those highly emotional situations where I would have to sit with the discomfort and push through it. So the question should be, is it a good idea? Is it a good idea to let it burn, or is it a good idea to white knuckle your way through it? And I think the answer to that is it depends. And I know that's not a very straightforward answer, but I want to see if I can answer both sides of the question. So if the answer to is it a good idea, no, then why? And if it's a good idea to let it burn, if the answer is yes, then why? Let's start with the answer no. If it's not a good idea to let it burn, then why isn't it a good idea to let it burn or to white knuckle? I think that it's not a good idea to let it burn. And I didn't think this before, but I do now. I do feel like the better thing for you to do, or the better response, would be better preparation. And what I mean by better preparation is being able to map out your day, map out your week, map out your weak moments, map out your red zones, meaning those moments where you find those moments in the day or the weekend where it is very highly likely that you are going to be put under duress and you're going to be tested. The best thing to do, in my opinion, is to have those things mapped out. So if you know what your day looks like, or what your week looks like, or what your month looks like, and you know where you're going to be and the circumstances that you're going to be up against, then planning for it is going to be a smarter strategy. And so what you would do is, if you in the past had gone to a certain area on a certain day at a certain time, and you know that if you went back to that, you will be confronted once again, the best thing to do then would be to not go, and then to instead find something else to do. Preventing yourself from putting yourself in those circumstances is going to be the best strategy. So you wouldn't want to put yourself in a situation where you know that you're going to be tested. Another reason why I don't think it's a good idea to white knuckle is, if you're in a situation where you have to white knuckle, or you have to sit with the discomfort and you don't have any other choices, then, or you don't have any other options, and there's no replacement or there's no alternative plan, then what you're doing is you put all your focus on that one thing. And when your focus is on that one thing that you don't want to be focused on, it becomes very, very, very hard for you to deal with. If I say to you, don't think of a pink elephant riding a bicycle, really, whatever you do, don't think of this pink elephant riding a bicycle. It's going to be very difficult for you to do that, because you have to focus on the thing that I'm talking about before you know what you shouldn't be focused on. And so it's the same concept. If you're white knuckling about something, you're focused on that one thing. And being focused on that one thing is going to make it very difficult for you to not engage that thing that you're focused on. I hope that makes sense, because usually what you're focused on is what you're going to eventually manifest or bring to fruition. Whatever it is that you're looking at, whatever it is that you're thinking about, if you just continue to think about it, or to look at it, or to ruminate over it, it's you're going to move in that direction of where you are focused. And so that's not a good option for you to sit in a space where all you have to do, you don't have any other options but to sit there with the discomfort about this particular thing that you're struggling with, that a part of you really wants to engage, but you're expending all your willpower that you have to stop you from doing it. If you sit in that space long enough, whatever it is that you're focusing on is going to manifest, is going to come to fruition. So in that sense, I don't think it's a good idea for you to white knuckle. So is it a good idea to white knuckle? The answer being yes. Why would it be good for somebody to white knuckle or to let it burn? I think the reason why it would be good for you to white knuckle in circumstances is because you do at some stage need to exercise willpower. There will be situations or circumstances that you're put in where it's necessary for you to be able to use some sort of willpower to be able to help you to restrain yourself, to hold yourself back. And willpower is something that will get stronger and stronger the more that you utilize it. And so I think that that whole concept that I spoke about earlier, that I came up with letting it burn, I do believe that when you do sit in the discomfort of difficult situations and are able to come through it, then there is some growth there. Then there is some purification happening. Then there is some things that melt off of you that are of a negative disposition or energy, and what is left after this kind of a situation or circumstance or purification that you've gone through is a better version of yourself. And I do believe that you do gain confidence through that process, a confidence that will serve you well in the next situations or circumstances that you might come across. Now, I will also say that this wouldn't be an excuse then to then purposely put yourself into a situation where you're going to have to test yourself again. That is not a smart thing to do, to deliberately put yourself in a situation where you're going to be tested. I think just the understanding that there are going to be circumstances where you're going to have to exercise and use your willpower that's important for you to understand and to acknowledge that you will confront situations like that. But it's not an excuse to put yourself in a situation to test yourself. You're not going to come up trumps on that situation or that decision to put yourself in a situation, especially early on. You do not want to put yourself in situations deliberately early on to test your willpower. You don't have much. And so with that also being said, is because your willpower isn't that much, it's not a good idea to deplete all your willpower all at once, because you need your willpower for other things. It does zap energy from you emotionally, physically, mentally, psychologically. And once that willpower is depleted, then it's easy pickings for your vices. And so it is important for you to let yourself experience the burn, to sit with the discomfort, to go through that purification. But it's not a good idea to put yourself deliberately in situations where you're going to have to deal with that. And it's not a good idea to put yourself in situations for long periods of time where you have to do that, because the problem with sitting in a situation where you have to let it burn for so long is that you're still just focused on the one thing. And usually what happens is once your willpower is depleted, then the one thing you've been focused on the whole time, which is uh, don't engage your vice. Once your willpower is gone, and then what purpose would it have served if you've gone back to serve yourself then? So there's I guess my response to both. Is it a good idea to let it burn? Yes. And is it a good idea to let it burn? No. I want to talk a little bit about this guy, Charles Duhigg. And if you don't know who Charles Duhigg is, well, he's the author of a best selling book, The Power of Habit. And if you haven't read this book, then this is an absolute must read for anybody who is trying to overcome their addictions or to have a better understanding of habits and how they work, and and the way that he has broken it down and put a structure to it so that things are labeled, and it makes it easier for you to visualize or to conceptualize, and to be able to follow a simple process on how to overcome your bad habits. But I do want to talk about what he has said about habits in general. And what he said is that you can't break a habit. You can only change it, or you can replace it. And so when I use sometimes I use the terminology break habits, like I'm gonna help you to break a habit. And the reason I use those terms, break or to break free, is because it is in a way breaking free from those habits, but it's not necessarily you've broken the habit. What you've done is you've just replaced it with a new one. Because one thing you're never going to get rid of are your triggers. And so those triggers are always going to be there. So you don't focus on trying to break the habit. You want to focus on replacing the habit or changing the habit. And so going back to the white knuckling and the letting it burn situation, if you don't change the habit and you think all you're going to do is to break the habit, and so what you do in a situation that is a tight situation or a difficult one for you to deal with, because you don't have anything to change it or to place it with, the only option for you then is to sit with the discomfort and to sit in those situations until you remove yourself from those situations. Though that makes it a lot more difficult for you to deal with, versus on the other hand, if you're caught in a situation or you get triggered by something, rather than staying in a situation or a circumstance where you know it's going to become more and more difficult, changing the situation or having an alternative plan where you remove yourself from a situation where you don't have to deal with it, is going to always be better for you. And especially if whatever it is you're changing it to is a better and a more positive habit. And so, like, for an example, like going to the gym or going for a run or going for a walk in nature, or calling out to a loved one, or meditating, doing any sort of mindful practice where you can change your emotional state. Those are all going to be better and more productive and helpful strategies to help you deal with your negative habits and vices. And so I do want to talk specifically about one concept that Charles Duhigg talks about. It's called the automatic action plan. And with the automatic action plan, is the whole behavior sequence of your habit. And so in order for a habit or a behavior to get actioned or to be put into play, there has to be some sort of a trigger. So you have a trigger, and then you've got a behavior, which is an automatic action plan. And this thing is already preset in your brain, and you don't really have to think about it at all. It does come second nature, because these habits have been, for years, have been carving out grooves in your brain that are so embedded into your way of thinking that it doesn't require you to think of it at all. And that's why they call it an automatic plan. So you have something that triggers you, and then you have an automatic behavior. And then the third thing you have is the reward of that behavior. So you have something that triggers you, and that trigger says, I need to get to this reward. And then you have an automatic plan that helps you to get that reward. And it's that automatic plan is really the only thing in that process that you have full control over, that you can change. The trigger, you're not going to be able to change the trigger. What you can do is minimize yourself from being triggered. But when you are triggered, you can change the automatic action plan or the behavior or the routine. And that's really what we want to focus on, is identifying what your action plan is that you do automatically, and then changing that to something that is going to be more positive and more productive, and that's going to help you, rather than put you onto your behavior where you get an instant bump of dopamine in your reward, and then it's it continues to put you onto that downward spiral that you're already on. So ideally what you want to do is you want to identify what your triggers are, what your automatic action plan is, and what the reward for that is. But the one thing that you're going to be able to replace is that automatic action plan with a new action plan, which is a deliberate action plan that you'll be conscious of having to implement it, but the reward is to be the same reward. And so that's not necessarily an easy thing to do. And I'll give you an example. Like, say, if you were planning to go to your friend's house to a party, like you always go to his house on Friday at 5 o'clock. And the trigger is the clock turns 5. You have this thing in your head that sets off. I go to the bar, or I go to the bottle shop. I get a bottle. I go to my friend's house. We get drunk, and the result of that is we have a really good time. I relieve some stress. I get to relax from the work week that I just had, and so on. Well, you can still have the same triggers. So your trigger is 5 o'clock still comes. You get triggered. It's like, okay, it's time to go to my friend's house. Well, instead of my friend's house, I plan to go to the gym, and I plan to work out there for an hour or so. And so we go to the gym instead of going to the bottle shop. We get a workout in, and in this replacement habit, what you're doing is you are moving yourself from one emotional state to another, is the first thing that you're doing, because exercise does that. It moves you from one emotional state to another. The other thing with that is that you had to work for it. And so, because it is something that you have to work for, it was physically tasking. It allowed you to, well, you had to sweat as a result. You pushed yourself beyond your limits. You did all these things that were that were intense physically, mentally, and emotionally, and it was also under, you put your body under duress for a specific time period. All those things also contribute and come up with the same result, which is a release of endorphins and dopamine in your brain. But more importantly, it gave you a sense of accomplishment. It built your confidence. Plus, it was a replacement to what you were doing before. There's confidence built into that because you have resisted something that you knew could have given you an instant high. You put that off for a better option, and your confidence grew as a result. And so that's, I guess, a simple explanation of how a replacement routine would work in that automatic action plan. So then it doesn't really become an automatic action plan yet because it's brand new. You still have the same trigger, but you consciously have to make the decision to do something different. And if you have a plan for those things, then it makes it much easier for you to be able to accomplish. So, like, what I would do is I would map that day out and just say, okay, rather than going to Johnny's house at 5 o'clock, when 5 o'clock comes, I'm gonna have my gym stuff packed and in the boot of my car, and then I'm gonna go straight there from there to my gym where I'm going to be doing my workout, and then after that I'm gonna have my a meal, and I'm gonna catch up with these people who are not affiliated with those people that are going to impact you negatively. You have that mapped out and planned out so that when it does come to the time that you do get triggered, you already prepared for it. If you go to a trigger point, or if you get to a point of a trigger and you have not a plan for it, if you haven't planned for it, then chances of that actually, having this plan in your head is not the same thing as having things mapped out. If you wrote it all out and just said, okay, this is what that particular time of the day is going to look like, the the chances of you following through with that new plan is going to be much, much greater than if you just said to yourself in the head, I'm not going to go there. I'm going to try and do something else. And then that something else never comes to fruition because you hadn't planned for it. Then guess what the default plan is? Yeah, it's going to Johnny's house and doing that thing that you said you didn't want to do, but you're still end up doing it anyway. So, I guess in conclusion, I think that there are two ways to answer this white knuckling situation, or whether you should or whether you shouldn't be doing it. And I think that they can both be right. I do feel like being in a refiner's fire, and I think if we want to become more, I think we have to melt off the dross. We have to get rid of the things that are within us that don't serve us. And the only way to do that sometimes is to go through the refiner's fire, that you're going to have to sit with the discomfort, that you're going to have to carry your cross, that you're going to have to sit in the fire. That's a requirement. That's a requirement for purification, is for you to endure. And sometimes enduring means to sit in the fire, to sit with the discomfort until the purification process has been completed. And I think that what God wants for us is to be purified. And the only way for us to be purified is to go through a refiner's fire. Going through this refiner's fire is the only way for us to be sanctified and to be purified, and to be cleansed of those things that God doesn't want us to have, because they hinder us from becoming what God has plans for, with regards to our destiny, and his building up his kingdom on earth. And on the other hand, I want to also say that having more willpower is also not the answer. Like, you're not going to go. I don't think that the best way for you to go through life is to put yourself under as much pressure and as much and as under as much duress as you possibly can handle, so that you can grow your willpower. It is important for you to exercise your willpower when it is necessary, and you will have to use that in some situations. But the smarter thing to do, and the better option for you to do, would be to prevent yourself from being in a situation where you have to use your willpower, where you have to white knuckle your way through a circumstance or situation, where you have to let it burn. You need to have alternatives. And be having alternatives, having an alternate plan, having being able to map things out in the best way possible is going to be the best way for you to prevent yourself from being put in these situations where you have to make those tough choices and put into those really difficult situations and circumstances. You know, yeah, having more willpower or getting more willpower is not the answer. You know, yes, you have to have exercise willpower. Yes, your willpower will get stronger, but no, don't be dumb and put yourself in situations where you have to exercise your willpower if you can help it. Prevention is always the best policy, and practicing replacing old habits with new ones is also going to be the best strategy. Don't put yourself in these situations, but the best way to do that is to have an alternate plan, a well mapped out alternate plan for your situations and circumstances that you know are going to be difficult for you. And I know that if you stick to those things and if you continue to work on yourself, I mean, like I said, it's not going to be an easy process. It's easier said than done, but knowing is half the battle. Understanding how your brain works with regards to your habits and your vices is key. It's really important. Having that awareness about what your brain is doing is so important. It's so important for you to understand how your brain actually works. And so you should be curious about how it works. You know, you shouldn't be judgmental, but you should definitely be curious. You should be observant. You should watch yourself in those situations, and so that you can understand, you know, all the intricate details that are, you know, and nuances surrounding your habits and what your brain does unconsciously or subconsciously behind the scenes to make these things happen. And the more clearer you can see those things, the more awareness you have about the way that your brain is working, the better you are going to be at planning for them, and in turn is going to be better for you to to prevent and to replace and to to overcome them and to move on to what what you should be more focused on, and that is the direction of your life, what God wants for you, and what your purpose is, what you deserve, what life is all about, and what your family deserves. And I hope that helped, and I'll see you on the next one.